held our lifeless baby against my chest, and just as the tears wet his tiny cheek, Daniel said he needed to step out for air and never came back. That was the moment I stopped believing in fairy tales. But 15 years later, I sat in a courtroom with the gavel in my hand and his fate at my mercy. The same man who left me broken on that hospital bed now stood in front of me, pleading not with love, but for his rights as a father. Before I take you down this twisted path of betrayal and poetic justice, let me say this. Thank you so much to all my subscribers. You are the reason I keep telling these stories. And to my new and returning viewers who are yet to subscribe, I truly appreciate you, too. Please, I cannot wait for you to hit that subscribe button. It is the fuel that keeps this channel alive. Be sure to share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters more than you know. Now, let me introduce myself. My name is Claire Whitmore. I am a family court judge in Atlanta, Georgia. I am a white American woman, 52 years old now, though I still remember what 29 felt like. I used to believe in romance. I used to believe a man would protect me, especially at my most vulnerable. Daniel proved me wrong. Daniel Prescott was my college sweetheart. He had the kind of confidence that pulled people into his orbit. I fell hard. He was handsome, ambitious, and persuasive. We married young, with dreams bigger than our bank account. I was finishing law school, and he had just landed a corporate job in the city. When I got pregnant, it was unexpected, but I was thrilled. We picked names. We painted the nursery. He held my belly at night and said we would figure it all out. But nothing prepares you for silence when you expect a cry. The baby, our son, never made it past his first breath. The delivery was quick, clinical, and cold. I remember gripping the metal bed rails, screaming not from the physical pain, but from the absence of life. He was born blue. Quiet. Still. Daniel was in the room, holding my hand, until the nurse took the baby to clean him and came back alone. Something shifted in him. I saw it in his eyes. He placed a single kiss on my forehead and whispered, "I need to step out for some air." That was the last thing I heard before the door shut. Not just the hospital door, but every emotional door between us. He never came back that night. Not the next day. Not even to collect me. It was my sister, Denise, who drove 2 hours to take me home. A week later, Daniel sent a text. Not a call. A text. "I cannot do this. I am sorry. Please forgive me." Forgive? I could not even understand it. I spiraled. For weeks, I could not eat. I could not breathe. I could not understand how the man who made promises in candlelight could vanish in fluorescent hospital gloom. Months turned into years. I focused on surviving. I stopped believing in happy endings and focused on rebuilding mine. Therapy became my church. The law became my armor. I rose fast, maybe out of spite, maybe out of hunger to prove I could still matter. At 38, I became one of the youngest female family court judges in the state. I dealt daily with people who betrayed each other, lied, cheated, begged for mercy. But I never saw Daniel again. Until 12 years later, on a Thursday morning, I sat in my chambers reviewing the docket. My assistant walked in and handed me the next case file. Prescott versus Prescott. Custody hearing. The petitioner is Daniel Prescott. I felt my heartbeat in my ears. At first, I thought it was a cruel coincidence. But the address, the birth date, there was no mistaking it. It was him. The man who left me drowning in grief was now asking for custody of 2 children from a failing marriage. I stared at his photograph stapled to the top corner of the affidavit. His face had changed. He looked thinner. Tired. The smile was gone. And he was coming into my courtroom. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. The past I had buried under a mountain of case law and hardened will had just knocked on my door. And this time, I would be the one asking the questions. When the courtroom doors opened that morning, I had already steadied my breathing. My black robe cloaked the memories I did not want to resurrect. I kept my hands firm on the bench, my chin slightly lifted, and my gaze unflinching. Then he walked in. Daniel Prescott looked like a man who had been drained by life. He had streaks of gray running through his once thick brown hair. His eyes, once full of charm and youthful arrogance, looked hollow. He was still handsome in a way that time could not fully erase, but the weight of his choices sagged on his shoulders. He did not recognize me at first. Maybe it was the robe. Maybe it was the fact that I no longer cried at the mention of his name. Or maybe it was simply because men like Daniel only remember women when they are broken, and I was anything but. He sat with his lawyer. He looked tired, nervous, like someone trying to negotiate his way out of a slow-burning fire. Then he looked up, right at me. And his face changed. He froze. I could see it, the moment of recognition. The twitch of his mouth, the widened eyes. His lawyer leaned in, whispering something he clearly did not hear. But I said nothing. I gave no reaction. I called the case like I would any other. Prescott versus Prescott. Petition for primary custody. I let the details unfold from the file in front of me. Daniel was seeking custody of his two children, Lily, age 10, and Chase, age 7. His wife, Victoria, was contesting the petition. Grounds for the hearing included alleged infidelity, emotional instability, and claims of neglect. It was surreal. The man who could not hold our dead son had gone on to create an entirely new family. He had tried again. Twice. And now it was unraveling. As Victoria entered the courtroom, I studied her carefully. She was young. Very young. Barely 30. Blonde. Petite. Pretty, but pale. Her lawyer carried a stack of documentation and photographs. I could see from across the bench, text messages, screenshots, and receipts. They were going to war. And I would have to referee. I tried not to feel anything. But memory has a scent. I could still feel the hospital sheets. Still hear the silence of that room. And now, here I was, holding Daniel's future in my hands. The hearing opened with Daniel's lawyer. He argued that Victoria had cheated. That she had abandoned the children emotionally. That she had taken a lover, a man named Shane Wilcox, who had now moved into their home. He claimed the children were being exposed to inappropriate behavior. That they needed structure. That Daniel, despite his flaws, was trying to protect them. But all I could hear was the irony in every sentence. Daniel had fled when life got hard. When I was bleeding and broken, he could not face me. And now he stood in my courtroom asking for sympathy, for understanding, for justice. When Victoria's lawyer stood, the tone shifted. They presented evidence of Daniel's violent temper. His past affairs. His emotional distance from the children. And then, something else. Victoria had kept a journal. She wrote about everything, how Daniel never touched her after their second child. How he drank alone in the den and locked the door. How he would disappear for hours, return smelling like strange perfume, and offer no explanation. How she had begged him to go to therapy, and he refused. Then came the photographs. Victoria had hired a private investigator. There was Daniel, arm around a woman who was not his wife. 2 different locations. 2 different women. Both recent. I watched him sink further in his chair. He looked nothing like the man who abandoned me 12 years ago. He looked worse. He looked defeated. And as the courtroom watched, I held my posture, unmoved, unreadable. The hearing recessed for lunch. As the attorneys filed out, Daniel lingered. His lawyer tried to pull him toward the door, but he stood still, staring at me. Our eyes met for the first time. His lips parted, like he wanted to speak. But I turned my gaze to the court clerk and asked for the next file. I had already heard enough. That afternoon, we resumed. Victoria gave her testimony. Her voice was shaking, but her words were clear. She did not want to destroy Daniel. She simply wanted peace. For herself. For her children. She admitted to the affair, but said it came after years of silence. Years of rejection. She said, "I did not feel like a wife. I felt like a ghost in my own home." And I believed her. I remembered that feeling well. Daniel's lawyer tried to discredit her. Tried to paint her as unstable. Promiscuous. Irresponsible. But it was weak. The facts were already on the table. When Daniel was called to testify, he walked slowly to the stand. He looked directly at me before he sat. I knew what he was thinking. That the woman in the robe used to be his wife. That the woman he left in that hospital room would now decide whether he would remain a full-time father. He was not ready for what I had become. He started his testimony with practiced remorse. He talked about the children, his work, his mistakes. He admitted to being distant, but said he never meant to hurt anyone. But not once did he mention our past. Not a word about the child we lost. The life he walked away from. I wondered if he had buried it, or if it haunted him at night the way it did me. The hearing ended just before sunset. I called for final submissions and scheduled the ruling for the following week. I closed the session with my usual formality. Court is adjourned. As I stood to leave the bench, I glanced one last time at Daniel. He was staring again, but this time, there was something else in his eyes. Regret. Not just for the custody battle, or the marriage falling apart. But for something deeper. Something buried beneath years of silence. And in that moment, I did not hate him. But I did not forgive him either. I spent the weekend reviewing the transcripts and evidence from the hearing, but my mind drifted more than once to the past. It was not just about Daniel anymore. It was about me. About the girl I used to be, the woman I became, and the version of myself I had fought to preserve. Every photograph Victoria submitted brought flashes of my own heartbreak. Every line of testimony mirrored pieces of the woman I once was. But I was not that woman anymore. Monday morning arrived with a quiet fog over the city. I sipped my coffee slowly in chambers, staring out the window before court began. I had written my ruling the night before, but I read through it again to make sure the words were measured, fair, and legally sound, despite the personal weight. I knew I had to make the decision with clarity. Not vengeance. But even clarity can carry truth like a blade. At precisely 9 o'clock, I entered the courtroom. Everyone stood. The energy in the room was heavy. Daniel and Victoria both sat quietly beside their attorneys. No one smiled. No one whispered. Even the court clerk avoided eye contact with me. I took my seat behind the bench, adjusted my glasses, and began. In the matter of Prescott versus Prescott, after careful review of the evidence, testimonies, and supporting documentation, this court finds that the petitioner, Mr. Daniel Prescott, has demonstrated a pattern of emotional detachment, dishonesty, and instability that does not serve the best interest of the minor children. Victoria's shoulders lifted as though she had been holding her breath for weeks. This court awards primary custody to the respondent, Victoria Prescott, with visitation rights for Mr. Prescott under the supervision of a court-appointed coordinator for a probationary period of 6 months. I looked directly at Daniel. The children deserve consistency, trust, and care. This decision is not to punish either party, but to protect the innocent lives affected by adult choices. Gavel down. Court is adjourned. The courtroom emptied slowly. Victoria left with her lawyer. She paused at the exit, turned around, and gave me a subtle nod. Not one of victory, but of survival. A silent thank you. Then Daniel stood. For a moment, he did not move. His lawyer whispered something, then stepped away, as if understanding Daniel needed to stand in this moment alone. He approached the bench. My clerk glanced at me, but I raised a hand gently. It was all right. Daniel stepped closer. Claire, he said softly. I did not answer. Judges are not supposed to engage once court is adjourned. But I was not speaking to him as a judge now. I was wrong, he continued. 15 years ago. I knew it the second I stepped out of that hospital. But I could not face it. I could not face you. Or myself. I remained still. I saw the baby, he added. Before I left. I looked at him. He looked like you. That broke something in me. Not a tear. Not a scream. Just a slow, deep ache I thought I had buried for good. And now, he said, I stand here and see you again, stronger, colder. Better. I finally spoke. You saw him, and still walked away. He swallowed hard. I never stopped regretting it. Then live with that, I said. Because I had to live with silence, shame, and a death I carried alone. You do not get absolution just because you feel sorry now. He lowered his eyes. For once, there was no defense. No charisma. No performance. Just Daniel. The man who left. I rose from the bench, grabbed my folder, and walked past him without another word. I did not look back. The next morning, a small brown envelope arrived at my office. No name. No return address. My assistant thought it was just another anonymous complaint or thank you letter from a case. But when I opened it, my hands froze. Inside was a typed letter. A single page. From Victoria. She had written it late the night after the hearing. Dear Judge Whitmore, it began, you should know something I only discovered recently. During my lowest point in the marriage, when Daniel had shut down completely, I did some digging. I found a box in the garage, taped shut and hidden behind old luggage. Inside were photos. Yours. Newspaper clippings. A sonogram. Your wedding photo. The birth announcement of the child you lost. I read it again, slower this time. He kept it all. I think, he never let you go. I do not say this to defend him, only to explain what I saw. He hurt you. He hurt me. But part of him stayed in that hospital room, and maybe he never came back from it. I thought you deserved to know. I folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the envelope. And I cried. For the baby I never raised. For the woman I had to become. For the years I spent blaming myself. But I did not cry for Daniel. Because some goodbyes are not spoken. They are lived. Today, I still sit on the bench in family court. I still hear lies and love stories unraveling. I still carry that part of me that once believed in forever. But now, I know better. Justice is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet. Personal. Final. He left me at the hospital after our baby died. But I left him at the bench after his life fell apart. And that was enough.